significance to the Son of God. Jesus said, "I am the bread of life." The bread, which was always in the sanctuary, needed to be unleavened. No taint of sin, for the leaven is the sin. And it needed to remain there at all times. It was always available. But was it enough for the priest to minister in the sanctuary and clean the furniture and bring incense to the altar and admire the bread? No. He had to eat from the bread. And this is very significant. We'll come to that later on. Let's consider the great high priest, Jesus. When he ministered here on earth, was he popular? For much of his time he was. At one time we know he had at least 82 disciples and thousands of people followed him. As soon as the word was out, Jesus is there, people went there. And they brought all their sick, those that were lame and blind, those that were just eager to hear what he had to say. They went and followed Jesus. But I'll ask the question, did the people that followed Jesus eat from the living bread? Did they receive spiritual strength from Jesus? Or were they just caught up with the excitement and the curiosity? Interesting. The mixed multitude left Egypt because of excitement and curiosity. Why were the disciples following Jesus? Why was the multitude following Jesus? The fact that they all left him, every single one, shows that none of them followed him for the right reason. Why are we following Jesus? Will we forsake him? Peter said never, but he did. He didn't know himself. Do we know ourselves? Laodicean condition. We know not that we are poor, blind, miserable, wretched, naked. We don't know our need. We don't know our condition. What was the reason that they followed Jesus? The mother of James and John came to Jesus. And what was her particular request? Some might say, oh, the arrogance. How dare she? What about the other disciples? They might want to be there. Can James and John be at your right and left hand? This was her desire. Of course, that would be a mother's dream. Have her sons on the right and left hand of the Son of God. But was her desire to eat from the bread of life? Or was her desire just to increase the position of her sons? Perhaps to gain special favour for herself even. Jesus did many miracles. He turned the water to wine. He healed the sick. He fed the 5,000. But was that the reason that the multitude followed him? Did the mixed multitude just follow because they saw the miracles in Egypt and they went along with the hype? Or did they desire something more? Let's turn to the book of John. Something happened in Jesus' ministry that caused a problem. And it's found in John chapter 6. John chapter 6. We'll read verse 66 and 67 first. It says in verse 66, "From that time many of his disciples went back and walked no more with him. Then said Jesus unto the 12, Will ye also go away?" Would they leave him as well? What happened to cause the 70 disciples to leave? What happened? Many of them left. If we turn back to the beginning of that chapter, verse 2 of chapter 6, it says, "And a great multitude followed him, because they saw his miracles which he did on them that were diseased." Why did they follow Jesus? Because they saw the miracles. That's why they followed. It wasn't because they were seeking for something more. No, they were Laodicean. Just like God's church is described to be Laodicean. The hymn that we sang at the beginning of this contemplation, "Break thou the bread of life, dear Lord, to me, as thou didst break the loaves beside the sea of Galilee." How did Jesus break the loaves beside the Sea of Galilee? This is something that I'd like us to consider. In John chapter 6, we'll read from verse 8 onwards. And let's pay particular attention to this story, for there are many lessons in it. More than 5,000 men, besides women and children, had gathered together. And Jesus, shortly beforehand, it's recorded well in one of the other Gospels, he wanted to go and rest a while, but the multitude followed, and his heart went out in compassion to them. He couldn't hide away from them because they were sheep without a shepherd. John chapter 6, verse 8. Jesus had told his disciples to feed the multitude after they had been speaking all day. And how did Jesus break the bread of life to them? And was it in fact bread of life, or was it just bread? One of the disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said unto him, "There is a lad here which hath 5 barley loaves and 2 small fishes. But what are they among so many?" And Jesus said, "Make the men sit down." Now there was much grass in the place, so the men sat down in number about 5,000. And Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed to the disciples, and the disciples to them that were set down, and likewise of the fishes, as much as they would. When they were filled, he said unto his disciples, "Gather up the fragments that remain, that nothing be lost." And therefore they gathered them together, and filled 12 baskets with the fragments of the 5 barley loaves, which remained over, and above unto them that had eaten. Here, Jesus did a very great miracle, with quite a few object lessons in it. Just as Jesus blessed the loaves at this occasion, so he desires to bless the Word of God for us. Here, the 5,000 men plus women and children ate to their fill. They ate from 5 barley loaves. How is that naturally possible? It isn't possible. And not only did they eat and were filled, or they ate